Hello, this is Darrell Castle with today's Castle Report. This is Friday, the 27th day of September in the year of our Lord 2024. I will be continuing my discussion of the two attempted assassinations of Donald Trump in light of the recently released 94-page report by the Senate committee tasked with investigating the Butler Pennsylvania attempted assassination in which Trump was wounded. I really struggled with the topic this week because I normally try to look at the most important issue in the world, and that is the brink of nuclear war on which the world now sits. In addition, Israel has alerted its armed forces to prepare for a ground invasion of Lebanon. Therefore, war involving the United States appears to be inevitable, even imminent. I decided, however, to continue with the assassination story despite the U.S. government's willingness to risk the destruction of the world in a nuclear holocaust. Perhaps Trump's seemingly narcissistic statement that he is the only one who can stop World War III is not just narcissism, but truth. Maybe that is why the United States Secret Service, which is supposed to be the best protective organization in the world, appears to be completely incompetent. Yes, folks, there are lots of coincidences appearing in the two attempts to kill Trump, and the Senate's 94-page report, while critical of the service, paints them as primarily mistakes and coincidences. I will try to look at all the smoke emanating from Washington, from Pennsylvania, and from Florida and point out that there might be a little fire going on in all that smoke. The service was established as a personal bodyguard for U.S. presidents, and all things considered has done a fine job, at least until November 1963, that is. Unfortunately, the service seems to be increasingly involving itself in U.S. presidential politics. Could the service have allowed what amounts to an amazing series of coincidences twice? Intentionally, not by incompetence. That is the question that caused me to ponder and then decide to look at that question instead of the coming world war that this murder target the service is supposed to protect has pledged to prevent. The Department of Justice released a 10-page pretrial memorandum in support of pretrial detention of Ryan Routh that set out within the body of the memorandum the accused assassin's handwritten letter, in which he offered $150,000 as a reward for anyone who is willing and able to kill Donald Trump. Where would that money come from? How would it be paid? Those are separate questions, but the real question is, why would the Department of Justice publish an offer to commit political murder for money? Why would the U.S. Department of Justice publish that reward offer to the whole world? It can't be more incompetence or more coincidence. At least that's my opinion. The Department of Justice decided to submit a 10-page memorandum to the court in the Southern District of Florida requesting pretrial detention for Ryan Routh. In other words, they wanted the court to order him locked in jail until his case could be tried. Apparently, the Department of Justice lawyers thought that the fact that he was trying to kill the former and perhaps future President of the United States was not enough to keep him in jail. The memorandum included photos of the assassin's gun and ammunition, along with a close-up photo showing that the serial number had been removed from the rifle. Was it necessary to include the would-be assassin's handwritten reward offer with the memorandum? I will spare you the entire letter, but I will quote just the most relevant part of it. Quote, "Dear world, this was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I am so sorry I failed you. I tried my best, gave all the gumption I could muster. It's up to you now to finish the job, and I will offer $150,000 to whomever can complete the job. Anyone across the globe, from the youngest to the oldest, knows that Trump is unfit to be anything, much less U.S. president," end quote. The illogical message is obvious. That is, that if everyone across the globe knows he's unfit, then he has no chance of being elected, and it would be unnecessary to assassinate him. No, Mr. Routh, the fear is that enough people do not share your paranoid delusion and your love of U.S. imperial ambitions to elect Donald Trump and stop the train carrying us to World War III. Perhaps enough people no longer want open borders and invasion by the third world into their communities. Look on the bright side, Mr. Routh. Perhaps those tens of millions of illegals already in America will all be allowed to vote for Kamala, thus assuring a world war. I'm certain that a U.S. war against Russia would make you very happy, Mr. Routh. You could enjoy it from your prison cell. Once Kamala is elected, until we are all subjected to nuclear winter, we can continue to struggle to buy our groceries. With the economy she and President Biden have brought to us, we would not dare say anything, though. We wouldn't mention it, lest we run afoul of one of her hate speech laws. We will not dare post on social media our distrust and dislike of this entire Democrat administration, lest we be fined or even arrested. As Democrat spokeswoman Hillary Clinton recently suggested on the Rachel Maddow show, yes, that's right, she said people should be subjected to criminal sanctions for posting misinformation. I suppose that could be defined as any speech that conflicts with the Democrat version of reality. So the Senate issued its 94-page report, which listed several things that went wrong in Butler, Pennsylvania. Keep in mind that this report is talking about the vaunted Secret Service, the most competent protective organization in the world. Some of those listed failures were a lack of a chain of command, poor coordination with state and local law enforcement, and inadequate resources to ensure the safety of Mr. Trump. Those are only a few of the most important failures. And the chairman of the committee, Gary Peters, speaking to reporters ahead of the report's release, said, quote, every single one of those failures was preventable, and the consequences of those failures were dire, end quote. Senator Richard Blumenthal, who heads the Permanent Investigative Committee, said that it was almost like an Abbott and Costello farce, with who's on first, finger pointing. It was stranger than fiction, he said. Well, it was Mark Twain who said that the reason truth is stranger than fiction is that fiction has to make sense. I don't expect the Senate committee to be overly critical of the service, but the way they just accept this level of incompetence in such a critical division of the government is amazing. Do people really want to keep electing these incompetent Democrats to run the government? Perhaps they do, but we will see. The level of coincidence involved in the two assassination attempts boggles the mind, but I suppose Washington is a perfect environment for a coincidence. In the Routh attempt, the only thing that kept the attempt from being successful was the assassin's mistake of sticking his rifle barrel through the fence so a competent agent could see it. If he had a little patience, just waited in the bushes and fired at the last second, perhaps he would have succeeded. We know that there was no prior sweep done of the golf course, no drones aloft, so he was practically invisible in the bushes until he revealed himself. Routh waited for 12 hours in his sniper's hide, but grew impatient at the last minute. Once again, the question must be answered in the Routh case. How did he know when Trump would be on that golf course? Without that information, we're left to wonder and speculate and develop those hated conspiracy theories. The plot in Butler, Pennsylvania was a little different, with a different type of assassin. The security for the speech in Butler was total incompetence from the beginning, so much that almost nothing happened the way it was supposed to. The service was so casual about protecting one of the most obvious targets in the world that indifference to his life or death is the word that comes to mind. There were last-minute additions to the schedule so that the First Lady was speaking that day in the same state. The Vice President was added to the schedule in another venue at the last minute. These two people drained resources away from the Trump team. The tall men usually assigned that duty went to the other two people I mentioned, and women from Homeland Security were placed on Trump's personal protective detail, meaning they were on the podium and were supposed to take the bullet instead of Trump. That sounds unbelievable, but nevertheless, it is apparently what happened. The women received a 2-hour webinar as training. Yes, you heard that right, folks. The people who were sworn to protect this man with their lives received a 2-hour webinar as their training. No canine teams, no drones. Improper people accessed the backstage area seemingly at will. The denial of sniper teams and additional trained agents to perform area sweeps so on and so forth, all had been denied to Trump for up to 2 years personally by service director, deputy director at that time, now interim director, Ronald Rowe. The denial of resources to protect Trump is reminiscent of the pleas by Robert Kennedy Jr. for protection before he dropped out of the race and joined Trump. Kennedy had several legitimate threats, including intrusions at his home, but still President Biden refused to allow the service to protect him. He tried to lay off the responsibility to Congress, saying they should provide assets, but no, Mr. President, the service is your responsibility. And this decision is on you. I realize that you don't have the mental capacity to know the difference, but it's like in professional football. When an injured player goes out on the field, if he's out there, he's a player, and he can legitimately be treated as such. If you can't do the job, Mr. President, then do the honorable thing and resign. Upon the resignation of Director of the Service, Kimberly Cheadle, Ronald Rowe became interim director, making him responsible for investigating the security plan the service used. In other words, he was investigating himself and the failures, many of which he was personally responsible for. He personally made cuts to the Counter-Surveillance Division, or CSD, of the service, which was responsible for venue threat assessment. The CSD did not conduct an evaluation for the Trump rally at Butler and was not even present the day of the rally. Rowe reportedly retaliated against agents who voiced concerns about security plans in the days leading up to Butler. Once again, we had a situation where it was so bad that a few agents who were dedicated enough to take their job seriously became what have come to be called whistleblowers. One such whistleblower stated, quote, "If personnel from CSD had been present at the rally, the gunman would have been handcuffed in the parking lot after being spotted with a rangefinder," end quote. Well, thank you, Mr. Whistleblower, thank you. A day late and $1 short. I could go on and on with the failures of the best in the world Secret Service, but it's all in the reports. The service could not properly provide protection, which is its job. So it could not do its job because it didn't have proper assets to do it. And the ones it had were not properly trained, or in some cases not trained at all. The criminal defense lawyers would refer to this negligence in the face of attempted murder as depraved indifference. In conclusion, the Department of Justice is advertising the attempted assassin's $150,000 reward for killing Trump. Matthew Crooks failed in one attempt to assassinate Trump. Ryan Ralph failed in another attempt to assassinate Trump. Their failures were both in spite of efforts by the Secret Service, or at least the complete indifference of service leadership. Ralph offered a $150,000 reward, or a bounty, and Department of Justice published that reward for him worldwide. Why would they release that letter offering a reward? How did he know Trump's schedule? Nobody outside the government seems to know, but I, for one, would sure like to know. Finally, folks, they're all in on it. They want him dead because he's too big a risk to prevent World War III. He's too big a risk of finding a way to at least slow the destruction of this country. This coming election is a lot more than a contest between the generational Marxist Harris and the billionaire Trump. The real contest is between two completely different spiritual forces. It doesn't matter if the contestants do not believe in these spiritual forces, they nevertheless represent them. At least that's the way I see it. Until next time, folks, this is Darrell Castle. Thanks for listening.